Train the muscles, not the joints. So welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a subject that I found was interesting, not necessarily totally bodybuilding applicable, but partially, right? So somebody just asked me what I think about what it was like before the internet. Like, what was it like living before the internet when it comes down to life in general, or how people as a society interact? What were the pros and cons of that kind of era, right? So I'd say that there are a lot of positives about the internet. I mean, never have we been able to exchange information at this rate. I mean, most of the time, back in the day, if you wanted to find out information, you had to take a course, or you had to order it through a 1-800 number, or get in touch with an expert somehow and physically be in their presence to learn from them in a lot of cases, right? Otherwise, maybe you're watching a documentary or a movie or something like that, but there wasn't necessarily this immediate gratification sort of thing going on where you could just click a button and then now you got the information and bang, you're supposedly an expert. So the positive part about the internet is that you can get this information very fast. The negative aspect of it is that you can misunderstand a lot of the information because the information isn't always joining experience. So when you get information without experience, usually what you have is misunderstanding. So I would say the internet has helped educate a tremendous amount of people, but what it has also done is created a tremendous amount of misunderstanding around the logic of life. And there's a lot of politically correct idealisms going on out there right now that have nothing to do with the embracing of reality or logic or common sense, as you can see. So in this way, before the internet, it was a lot nicer because experience was more valued. It just wasn't education or information that somebody read somewhere that was so deified. I mean, right now it's almost like people think they're speaking the words of God when they read some study or read some sort of piece of information on the internet, and they think it's automatically true. And on the negative aspect right now is that a lot of times people will read some information and then they'll deny their own experience, even though their experience is in opposition to what they've read. You know, so they're basically almost bullied into believing this information based on the sheep mentality. Well, back in the day, you didn't have quite so much bullying going on based on idealisms and information that people were just kind of throwing at you through Facebook posts or whatever. So you did almost have your own little bubble from time to time where you can conduct your own experiments. And that was the nice part about before the internet, before that was, especially social media, before social media became so prevalent. Now, on a social aspect, the thing that I find that's really negative right now when it comes down to the internet is that people have identified relationships or associated relationships with a lot of superficiality. So right now, when you just text somebody or you post some picture and say, hey, you know, wave on Facebook or on Instagram or something like that, people assume that's the same as having a physical interaction with somebody. Based on this superficial sort of way of interacting that we have going on now, it's almost like friendships are not necessarily as close. People aren't as close as they used to be because there's not this time in each other's presence that is valued. And I noticed that there's something missing. Like a lot of people, they have a hard time with intimacy. They have a hard time with just being around other people. And one of the contributing factors right now in this day and age might also be because everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a witness, and everybody's afraid of doing something wrong because somebody's going to film it and then put it up online somewhere. So back in the day, you could make some mistakes without all these eyes watching you constantly. You could make mistakes, you could do things and then, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But at least you weren't getting publicly shamed for it for about 10 years. You could actually learn from your own mistakes. Maybe you could talk to somebody and maybe they didn't like you anymore because you insulted them somehow, but at least you figured that out through your interaction with the person, and then this dance was possible. So this is something that I think is lost in this day and age, where back in the day, you could dance with a partner. You know, dancing can only happen when you're physically in the same proximity as somebody, but you can't do this when it comes down to just throwing a text message back and forth. So I think the essence of a human being, in a lot of cases, the essence and the presence of a human being has been devalued. And now we have a lot of people that are lonelier than ever, that are just interacting through some sort of posts on the internet. And it's almost like they isolate themselves from any sort of physical interaction or any sort of physical relationship because that's just too inconvenient. So that begs the question, you know, have we really become a better species or better human beings? Because you know how it is, like whenever things are too easy, things are too comfortable, you don't necessarily evolve. And right now we are in the convenience age where a lot of people are just going to what's convenient, but not necessarily what's going to bring a higher standard or a higher state of fulfillment in their life. And interacting with people and having real relationships, although they can be sometimes troublesome, sometimes they're not convenient, they can be transformative for everybody involved when you're actually with a person, really in a relationship with them, whether it's a friend or whether it's a family member or whether it's a acquaintance of some sort, where you're forced to work together as a team. So that's the thing that I really liked about there not being as much of an internet. Back in the day, you were forced for entertainment. Like, people were your source of entertainment. It wasn't just movies and things. Sure, we had TV, sure we had video games, sure we had movies and things, but there were these spaces in between those things where it was just you and this person. And sometimes you would do the whole TV movie thing together, or you go to a play, or whatever you did, go to lunch, go to dinner, but there was more of an interaction. I mean, now you see people at a table and they're all on their phones and they're interacting with other people rather than paying attention to the person that's in front of them. So back in the day, there was some value placed on the presence of another human being. And I think that we're missing something big time because this has been discarded, because there is something you get out of it. When you're in a close proximity with somebody and you're actually interacting and you've learned how to taste the person in front of you, you know? That's a good metaphor to use. I mean, imagine if you always ate food, but you just swallowed and never tasted it. It's almost like people have lost the ability to absorb the presence of another human being and really get something out of that. Instead, they're always using everything as a comparison of their own narcissistic sort of thing. They've got their own, Instagram posts and their own selfies going on and their own life presented out there, but they're just presenting it because everybody's just a glorified audience, but not necessarily a friend. So this is the thing that I miss about that time. There was more interest. There was more interest in people physically interacting. Where now, I mean, if you're even in the same neighborhood as somebody and you knock on their door, they think, oh, wow, what are you coming over to my house for? What's this about? There's more distance than ever in this day and age, even though we have all this interaction. It's all superficial interaction, or a lot of it is very superficial. So that's really what we've lost from the internet. People have mistaken this superficial sort of text messaging as a replacement for a real relationship, and it can never do that. It just can't do that. So from a bodybuilding point of view, I find that it was a lot more fun to train back then too, because you didn't have this constant comparison going on, people comparing you to this and comparing you to that. I mean, I know I'm at fault of that because I post things on this channel and because I try to teach based on my own experience and stuff, because I have my own life purpose going on, trying to break some of the illusions that are being perpetuated on the internet. But at the same time, back in the day, a person could work out, conduct their own experiment, and they weren't constantly being publicly shamed or compared, like, because everybody has access to all these different opinions. And there's a million different opinions out there, a million different types of religious dogma going on about physical fitness. And the minute somebody does something different than what they read or watched somewhere on the internet, then they're making fun of this person. So back in the day, it seemed like there was a little bit more of an embracing around technique. There wasn't such a fanaticism around how to train. That's what I'm going to say. People were not so fanatical, but now it's almost like, because people become so superficial and so unhappy in some way, they've become more attached to what they know around something, like their knowledge or their information that they've collected. Because really what they're seeking is relationship, but they don't know how to interact. So basically they're trying to find some way to cope, and being fanatics around what they know is usually the way they're doing it, because they're not feeling fulfilled or satisfied in some way. So this is one of the things that I find with bodybuilding. It's become extremely bad because of the internet. Where back in the day, I mean, you could train, conduct your own experiments, find out what worked for you, and then compare with your friends, and it was more like a tool to collaborate instead of a tool to separate. And it's become more of a tool to separate in this day and age than collaborate. In a lot of circles anyway, based on this comparing going on. I mean, because whenever you treat people like numbers or treat people like strangers, it's a lot easier to have hate. And because so many strangers are interacting with not any real relationship going on, it's easier for these prejudices to pop up, or easier for somebody not to like you just because you don't look the way they think you should look, or you're not acting the way they think you should act, and that sort of thing. Whereas if you were in an actual relationship with them and they cared about you, they wouldn't be quite so judgmental. So there's a lot more judgment going on the internet. It's crazy compared to what it was back in the day. So I'm not saying it was perfect back then. I mean, there's a lot of other negatives about growing up before the internet, but in this way, being able to be free to make your own mistakes has tremendous value, because if you learn from the little mistakes and then you move along, then the big ones won't be quite so big. But now I find people are almost playing a video game and calling that real life. They're assuming that this video game they're playing is actually real life, and then they go out in real life and then they experience a massively traumatic experience and like, oh wow, that didn't work out like the video game. Well, it's because you're disconnected from reality. So the internet has disconnected people a lot from reality. The reality that is the law of cause and effect. That's it, you know, and they're totally disconnected from that because they're playing video games or on the internet where there's not the same physical repercussions for actions. So that said, yeah, did I like that time much more? In a way I did. In a way that was a much better time to live. But in this day and age, if you use this information, but you don't get attached to it so much, and you do hold your center and you do start to value people in front of you, you can have a win-win situation nowadays, right? The plus side of nowadays is that if you have something to say, and if you have something that you want to share with people, it's never been easier. Where back in the day, you needed to go somewhere to get an opportunity from somebody that held the keys to the kingdom for you, right? You needed to get discovered. Where now you can be your own person and build your own thing, whether it's social media, build your own music career, build your own modeling career, whatever it might be. Maybe you're building your own business in some way, shape, or form, marketing your own line of clothing or whatever it might be. You can do these things where back then it was a lot harder to do. You needed a lot more money, you needed physical locations, you couldn't just use companies that print things off and send them out for you. You had to do everything yourself in a lot of ways, or come up with a lot of money to pay people. So yeah, if you do hold your center, if you don't become a fanatic, and you do start valuing real relationships rather than just superficially interacting, I think that you can, you know, build a really great life now. But yeah, that's what I liked about back in the day. I liked the fact that you had your kind of bubble to make your own mistakes and to learn without constantly being under somebody's watchful eye, you know, constantly being judged and things. So yeah, I hope this helps you understand that, yeah, the more miserable people are, the more fanatical they become. And sometimes when people are lonely, they're pretty miserable. So go out there and make some friends, all right? So I hope this helps you out in your training, life in general. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com. And thanks a lot to the Patreon supporters. These are my buddies right here. And take care for now.